let me ask you a question about that. So you were playing, like if you go listen to what you did on the Johnny Carson show, and you're playing like straight ahead, and then out comes Inner Mounting Flame with the orchestra, and you're playing with I think it was a Marshall stack at the time, and the whole 9 yards, complete rock tone, if and all that. How did you make that shift in your head to go from that style to this style? What was the impetus for that?
I would say two aspects of that. By 1965, I would be playing with Graham Bond organization with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker, and we were R&B. I mean, we played jazz, but we liked the R&B side of jazz. In fact, most of the 60s, I was doing R&B or funk. But by 1965, I'd become dissatisfied with the classical jazz guitar tone of like Jimmy Rainey or Wes Montgomery.
Right.
Simply because it was too classical for me. Probably because I was heavily under the influence of Coltrane and Miles, of course, but particularly Coltrane and the way he was looking for sound. And Train, he would sometimes play two notes, and then that it was almost a kind of distortion. So by 1965, 1966. I found myself a cheap way to get a big amp. I think it was a Fender Bassman. No, I mean the only way I could get it, because I didn't have any money, but I knew somebody who built them cheap, and he had the circuit, and he built me a fake Fender Bassman. With a big speaker. Yeah.
Got to do what you got to do, man. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. So I could crank it up, and hear a little, and start to hear some of the tones being more wide, and with more harmonics in them. And this because I was just trying to emulate Train.
Sure.
And then I don't know when Jimi Hendrix arrived in the UK with playing with the Experience with Noel and Mitch. Jimmy knocked me on my feet just like everybody is, and I could see. I'm not talking about from a musical point of view, because Jimmy's not going to play giant steps. He's not going to play anything like that. He's playing the blues. I mean, he was heavily influenced by Muddy Waters. And Muddy Waters was the first guitar player I heard at 11 years old. and he just blew my mind. And so Jimmy had the thing with Muddy, which took me back to my childhood. The way he sang was like Muddy. Mm-hmm. But he had the way he approached the guitar was, for me, the way Train was approaching the saxophone. Beautiful. It was beautiful, and it was bold. He even had a bold. What was that album?
Axis Bold as Love.
Yeah, and this really, I think was the final knocking me off the classical guitar tone cliff. And that said, there is, for example, an album coming out later this year, which is a compilation of Montreux concerts. You know the Montreux Festival in Switzerland?
Yes.
I mean, I've been playing this since 1971. So they've taken a selection of these concerts, just live concerts. And there's, for example, you remember a band called the Free Spirits?
Yeah. I mean, vaguely, not really well.
Okay. It's in the 90s with Dennis Chambers on drums and Joey DeFrancesco. And I love
I certainly know those guys, but yeah.
I love the Hammond organ trio. I've done a lot of work with Hammond organ trios, not the least being Tony Williams with Larry Young. And one of the cuts from one of the performances that we did in Montreux is the Free Spirits, and I'm playing a little more. Let me say, I cranked down the distortion. Yeah, basically zero distortion, because that kind of genre, the Hammond organ trio, it doesn't work with the distorted guitar. So, I'm still a classical jazz guitar player, bebopping away. And so when you finally get to hear this, it's coming out later this year. Oh, I mean, it's available on record, you know, where it's a Carla Bley tune called "Sing Me Softly of the Blues," and you hear that side of me does come out every now and then, you know. So, but in fact, coming back to the what tipped me over the edge was this, because you hear the later recordings of Coltrane, you know, Om or Intergalactic Space. I mean, he is just out there flying with a horn and these triple notes sometimes coming out,
Right.
harmonics coming out. And this with Jimmy was, I love Jimmy because of that. And there's just a little anecdote, because one day I was at Miles's house. And in the beginning, 69, I was going around all the time. He was just, what he was doing, he was picking my brain, because I always had the guitar with me. You
Right.
know, he play a chord and say, "What do you hear? What do you hear?" You know.
I love the voice.
So, I mean, one day, you know, we're talking about Jimmy, and he said, "I never seen Jimmy play." And I said, "Never seen him play." Dang. And there was a Village Voice and handy, and I looked at the Village Voice, and the Monterey Festival movie from
Yeah.
'68 was down in the Village on one of these art cinemas. I said, "Miles, I'm going to take you to the movies." So we went downtown. We were sitting in the, and of course there was like a lot of stuff on. Ravi Shankar was on with Ala Raka. There was all kinds of bands on there. But Jimmy came on. Jimmy started to play, and Miles is sitting next to me. All he's saying is, "Damn, damn." And that was it.
I'm sorry. He's not the only one that said that. First time he's like, wow,
"Oh yeah, oh
you know,
yeah." Look, I love Jimmy. I love it. I mean, we got to jam, although it was difficult circumstances. Since I was, yeah, that's because of Mitchell, you know, and the early '60s. We were both in Georgie Fame of the Blue Flames.
right. I love Mitch. I loved him. I loved his playing, Mitch Mitchell.
Yeah. And he was probably Tony Williams' greatest admirer. So every time he came into New York with Jimmy, he'd come and see us at the Vanguard or wherever we were playing. And then one night he was there at the Vanguard, and he said, "You know, Electric Ladyland, you remember that studio?"
Sure.
And he said, "You know, there's a jam going on around the corner, Electric Lady." So I went around there with Larry. Larry Young came with me, and Dave Holland. We all went around there. But at that time, this was early days. I was still playing a Hummingbird guitar with a D. Armand pickup on it.
A Gibson Hummingbird?
Yeah, I know that.
That's what you're playing with the D. Armand?
Yeah, that's the guitar that's on In the Silent Way. I know it's like,
oh my God,
clean guitar. Yeah, that's clean. And it was only because of playing with Tony and Larry. I mean, they would get, the volume was just like cranking up, and I had to get a solid body. And for the album, I rented a Les Paul Custom, so I could compete with those two guys, you know. But in the studio with Jimmy, actually, it was just a party. And Jimmy was so gracious and sweet, like all the good players I've ever met, you know, totally unpretentious, very unassuming. And there were other guitar players there, bass players, drummers. I mean, but that's where I met Buddy Miles. Buddy and I, we started to hang out after that. In fact, it was Buddy who took me to the Garden when Jimmy was playing with the band of Gypsies. Yeah, that was after the experience. And then I got to meet him again, and he was always so sweet, Jimmy, but just a lovely person. In any event, that was Jimmy. God rest him. You know.
So if I was to encapsulate that, it was the harmonic content, the freeness of the saxophone, you know, and all of that, and Jimmy's tone. And I mean, I don't want to get too crazy about it, but you know, all that makes a lot of sense.